Then Mark will start.
We all good to go?
All right, it's about to go live to Facebook.
No,
It always makes me.
It doesn't show.
It doesn't show for you. Okay, now you can go.
Well, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Lit Balm Weekend of Love Part 2. Just as important as Part 1, as you know, if you know about love. We have a fantastic feature today, but before we get to our feature, I'm going to introduce my co-host, Cassandra, who is one of the preeminent prose poet scholars and prose poets, and international expert on prose poetry. Her own prose poetry is widely anthologized and has been translated into Japanese, Chinese, and Korean. Cassandra has published more than 30 books and is currently writing an illustrated book of prose poetry on the Hiroshima maidens with funding from the Australia Council and the Victorian government. Cassandra co-wrote prose poetry, an introduction, and co-edited the anthology of Australian prose poetry. She's commissioning editor for Westerly magazine and professor of writing and literature in Melbourne, Australia.
Thank you. You extemporized and made me seem super important at the beginning. Thank you. I would like to read one of my Hiroshima poems that I'm working on for my manuscript, and it's called Forgetting Hiroshima. Nothing happened in Hiroshima. Our story ends before we board the Shinkansen. You should take back the omelets wet with eggy juice and the miso soup served with 3 silver pieces of mackerel. We weren't there. We never sat cross-legged prizing oysters from their shells. You didn't cry at the museum in front of the colloids suspended in glass. Nothing happened in Hiroshima. Forget me straddling you in the blue of the Seto Inland Sea, your fingers mapping the irregular coastline down my spine as a new language haunts our lips. Everything happened in Hiroshima. In the deep silence, a mother calls her child's name as they pull bodies with a fire hook from the river. And now I'd like to introduce Mark Vincennes. Join in. I know we had it yesterday, so it'll still be in your brain. Mark Vincennes is an Anglo-Swiss American poet, a fiction writer, an editor, a translator, a publisher, a designer, a multi-genre artist, and musician. He has published over 30 books of poetry, translations, and fiction, including more recently, There Might Be a Moon or a Dog with Gazebo Books in Australia, 39 Wonders and Other Management Issues, and forthcoming collections are A Splash of Cave Paint with Spite and Dival, The Pearl Diver of Iranmani with White Pine Press, and The King of Prussia is Drunk on Stars with Lavender Ink. Mark is also a prolific translator, and he's translated from, I hear you say, German, Romanian, and French. He has published 11 books of translations, most recently an Audible Blue selected poems 1963 to 2016 by award-winning Swiss poet and novelist Klaus Merz. His own work has been translated into many languages, including Japanese, Chinese, Russian, French, Italian, Romanian, Greek, German, Icelandic, and Silbo-Gamoran. He is currently working on a novel entitled The Age of Occasions. Vincennes is editor and publisher of Mad Hat Press and publisher of New American Writing. He has lived, join in, all over the world, from Brazil to China to Iceland to India. He was born in Matilda Hospital on the Peak in Hong Kong, but he now lives on a farm in rural Western Massachusetts overlooking Herman Melville's Greylock Mountain, Melville's inspiration for Moby Dick, where there are more, wait for it, drum roll, basilica orb weavers, beautiful wood nymphs, and bicolored agapostamens sweat bees than people. Mark, do the sweat bees wear sweaters over there, or do they wear jumpers? You're on mute, so I'm missing your pearls of wisdom.
Definitely they wear jumpers.
That's because they jump around a lot.
Of course. And just speaking of which, this is a love poem to a worm. And it's called Denial is the Worm Inside Me. A short documentary on gladness in 4 acts, directed and shot with a single lens camera and 2 digital microphones. Act 1, background. Hailed from a fertile province, with many wildflowers in the grasslands of Mongolia, lived in a boring brown yurt and drank warm mare's milk and cold butter tea, watched us smear hot yak dung across our meadows, sun-dried pasture-grazed dung made for the best goat stew, and filled our abode with the fragrance of wild onion and juniper, ferile garlic, and that ragweed crawling in spice ants. Act 2, arriving. For a long time, she'd been lodged in the corpse of a mealy-mouthed wasp, who, strangely over time, came to look like a frilly grilled mushroom and learned to chant the sutras, a starry-eyed wisdom that came down from those long before and was preached by a dusty old fellow who forgot his sandals on the filthy shores of an eternal river, a river that carried the dead to their fiery underworld, a river that also breathed new life and birth into a revolving chain of souls. All this came down from that bearded fellow who swore by second, third, and fifth lives, who drew his own breath in the shadows of an ancient tree infested with parasites and rotting fruit, and stared blindly into the sun. Act 3, flashback. She speaks with a languid Ulaanbaatar drawl, and on humid nights like these, she emerges from the folds of my lamb's wool blanket and espouses her worm wisdom in simple yet flowing sentences, reminding me that once we Mongols ruled the known world, warriors that rode all night drinking blood from the steaming haunches of their horses, sleeping only on quiet stretches between ravage and pillage. And just like the Persians and the Vikings, it was all about the shiny gilded artifacts. And yet she, the worm, perseveres. The empire is hers and hers alone. Act 4, stuffed. And when one waning moon our worm dies, she is reborn, not as a queen or an empress, but stripped down to a single cell, a cytoplasm pushing against her own glutinous membrane, multiplying and invigorating until eventually she becomes a handsome house overlooking the valley of the finer temptations. And maybe it's better the devil you know leads you into the underworld, and maybe after dreaming far and wide for a lifetime, I can finally dream in the here and now, reach my arm out in the middle of the night and light a candle to separate out layers of darkness, find a fetish to carry me through like churning butter or baking bread, that we might return to the very beginning and find the ever after in the grass and in the soil. And I'm now delighted to introduce the first of our features today, who is Allison Adele Hedge. Allison is a legacy artist fellow, California Arts Council, and recent awards include the George Garrett Award, Fulbright First Jade Nurtured Suhi from China, Female International Foreign Poetry Award, and a US Library of Congress Witter Binner Fellowship. Allison's book include The Year of the Rat, Dog Road, Woman, Off-Season City Pipe, Blood Run, Burn, Streaming, Look at This Blue, an assemblage poem, which was a National Book Award finalist in 2022, and a memoir, Rock Ghost, Willow Deer from 2014, and a play, Icicles. The social media hashtag poem prompts fourth pandemic hosts hundreds of original prompts Allison crafted as a public outreach during the COVID-19 pandemic. Allison teaches creative writing and narrative medicine at the University of California. Welcome, Allison.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Cassandra, and hi, everybody. And Mark published Burn, one of the books that he just mentioned. Thank you for that as well. Thank you for the support. I'm going to start just reading an elegy because of love loss. A time, elegy for my mother. The problem is, it's not been written yet. The omens, the headless owl, bobcat struck the red wolf where she could not be. None of it is done, and yet it's over. There's nothing yet of night when she called me closer, asked me to bring her crow painting, to stay straight across from her feet so she could waken into it and remember her friend. Old Chief alongside her shoulder, still watching over her, just as the mountain had done throughout her Alberta childhood. The Pendleton shroud bearing our braids, her figure in flaming pyre, the cards, the notes, the task, the things undone, not done, and she with us, far away, as this has always been and ever will continue. We meet, we leave, we meld and vaporize from whatever it was that held us human in this life, and all the beautiful things that lead our thoughts and give us reason remain despite the leaving. And all I know is what you know. When it's over, said and done, it was a time, and there was never enough of it. And a little love for nature. Harpstrings. Sweet rain on old growth sweeps past in fanning sheets. This morning, each veil brings joy, like someone strumming, mist releasing song, falling to branch above hummingbird, dashing in, out, grabbing nectar in the wet, wet music. Dashing in, out, grabbing nectar in the wet, wet music, mist releasing song, falling to branch above hummingbird. This morning, each veil brings joy, like someone strumming. Sweet rain on old growth sweeps past in fanning sheets. And another kind of love poem, Summer Fruit. Plums hanging low, summer rain and reggae balm below here and a banana slide, cherry, just right, just right. Listen, she's telling now. Innocent plum, succulent plum, resonant plum, swing plum like yo-yo rum, like yo-yo rum, like yo-yo rum, plum over round into your palm, plum, make it raspy. Plum, firm flesh gives way to finger, thumb, touch, teasing, easing, plum juice from tantalizing fruit, spills plum love, plum song, plum sweet touch to whoever takes some, while summer has its way with us, it's true. Both of us sing a raspy, plum juice, black cherry throat song shadowed in dark where duendes play. Easy light lift from creases, opening flutter. Is summer a box of light, box of fruit, opening, light streaming in all directions, fanning heat and rays spread, sunshine through sheltering shade, shadow dark embracing, offering light in each give, each bend, every pressing hold, sheltering in radiance resplendent. Look here, sunshine in rain, brilliance, like languages held in secret, traditional tongues kept present, nurtured, sheltered in shade, sun, light, dark, reed, oboe, her story, song, love, cradled in every bit of wild planted sweet, how she grew you and fills you now. I remember the taste, love, remember him bringing promises, wine, playing his reed oboe on a cotton sheet, spread in summer swelter. Island, mountain, sky, box of light, shade, plum love, plum, sweet touch, take some. And a few little pieces from Those were from streaming, and these are from Look at This Blue. Look at This Blue is a book length work, so excerpts. It is a love letter and an indictment of the state of California and to the state of California. When you really love someone, something, you have to hold it accountable. So it's a love of a fuller type. And after some of the opening in the book, this excerpt comes. Left there, let love lead. Let hand that pummeled rest. Let scowl rest, face relieve. Let shoulders locked tight recede. Let feet cracked worn ease. Let back stiff sore bend open. Let lungs swell breath like ocean. Let all of us, let all of us be unbroken. Take heart. Earth hears every tremble touch, feels each foot upon it, listens now. Bring her justice, protection, peace. A little memory love excerpt. In the bus on the way to retraining for field workers, we left Santa Paula for Ventura Daily, rhododendron, eucalyptus, limaria, orange groves and peppers, flowers for Burpee Seed Company, red-winged hawks were every mile of eucalyptus, 126, Ventura Freeway, on much like us for movement, X, Santa Paula, the North Star of Guanajuato, Mupu of Shumash. We escaped here too, refugees, closed our eyes, let finger conjure map and conjure home. This is where, from here, everything changes. Rewrite, reset, reverb, offer projects. Hold on, apparently Alexa is answering my poem. Sorry about that. I have a relative on Alexa. So I'll just start back where I left off. Sorry. X. It's kind of funny. Alexa sent us some love there. X, Santa Paula, North Star of Guanajuato, Mupu or Shumash. We escaped here, refugees, closed eyes, let finger conjure map, conjure home. This is where, from here, everything changes. Rewrite, reset, reverb. Offer projects for Santa Ynez kids at get-go. Offer send for my folks to follow me. Dad notes, note this. If there's snow on Topa Topa, everything's okay. Mom doesn't leave the pickup until the 4th day. Vallejo apartment, their last place west, way prior to my lifetime. Restful here now. Restart, peace, gratitude. So lucky to have a dad. And then just a couple more small excerpts. Your palms know where to go. What they imagine leads you. Everything we muster moves us along like mirror, watering itself, remembers where to flow and how to go there. In the dream you follow. In the dream we fly over all of this direness. We float vaquitas. We move like smallest porpoises, undulate in air like swimming, arms tight against our sides, California spread below us, manzanitas gleaming in sun. Stars ahead and darkness await our time there. For now, it is the offering we make. And the last bit. Dazzled under your luminosity, nitric acid photons, air glow field, 100,000 million stars in the sky road above, corn mush, acorn, take some home. California, come home. Somewhere beyond brutal lies beauty, unrequited. Requiet now, quiet now. Requiet kindness, mutual aid, reciprocal abundance, beauty, as far as land is poppied here, the chaparral roam, bladder pods stand. Let this dream, the breath, a plume, vascular thrum, strengthen. Let some tongues speaking at night as they shift along, playa sailing stones. Let wanderlusting, night unbroken, spirit unbroken, like drawing lines in sand. Thank you.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for drawing some lines in the sand for us. Next, we hear from Anne Vickery, who is a Melbourne-based poet and scholar. She's the author of 3 poetry collections, the most recent one, Bees Do Bother, an Antagonist Care Pack, which was published by Vagabond Press in 2021 and shortlisted for the Judith Wright Calanth Award. Welcome, Anne.
Thanks, Mark. I thought I would start by following up your mention of the underworld with a poem called Autumnal Hook. What if Persephone remained a hard woman, an ethics of care turned towards oneself, love's harvest, the halves of intimacy in these latitudes, a climate of change revealed as cycle of constant return, how to reconcile, farm my inadequacy for yours, or simply distract. Let's just say, for argument's sake, let's just say pugilism is always political, platforms cropping hay, the field of absolutes you might travel to. I distill the brackish dark, listen low over the lees, lyre strings laid flush to decide a core. Store of regrets, bare-knuckled figs, a desire to fall foul. Your rallying jig as jubilant plucked you. Cross-dressing Orpheus to your Eurydice, I discover I want as a mode. To provoke the strike back, for you to tell me that the light is yours, and it is I who have disengaged song, who must feel my way through the ever-burdened earth, to be called a muffler, bobbing compliment. The next one is a bit more experimental, but I'm not going to share my screen. It's called Unforeseen FX. Typographical error makes me live you more each day, all the fruitiest salad days of my unastounding youth, fresh firm to ouch, sluice running rivulets down my humdingers, leaves of green, a sticky miss, wilt, upturned fascia to cuss, my inner coast dealings on display, here they are for all to see. Can I whistle fluent profanities to you if my mood autocorrects song to joy always as sing tomboy and says you are a shit? Moonlight soon after by compost Lord Pig's van, my blind blissful germ and his bland loaves. Fly this motion through a sows and years. Take a sissy style from Marlena, garbage revival, and told mine leaven in blue angle. Am I forever tagged to you displeasing Parisian evening? Tear open the pan and butter freely while warm. Homemade is best for service cleaning while you make light work of it. Love looks more and more like louvers while you try to SMS this heart and find only glasnost. Common ownership is now a closed window. Text-only tampering provokes sudden fonts. I am wooden blocked. And the last one, I thought we could sort of like do someone else's poem. And I thought, given that we are sort of like up against the Super Bowl, I would look for poems about love poems about football. The only one I could find was one by Jack Spicer called Army Beach with Trumpets. Rather than our bodies, the sand proclaims that we are on the last edge of something. Two boys who cannot catch footballs, horseplay on the wet edge. Or if the sight of the thing ended, did not break upon us like a wave from every warm ocean. We call it sport to play on the edge, to drop like a heartless football at the edge. And I couldn't find any Rihanna poems, given that she was the halftime entertainment. And yeah, that's it from me.
Thank you, Anne. Next, we're going to hear from Nurkse, or Dennis Nurkse, who's the author of 12 books of poetry. Most recently, A Country of Strangers, new and selected from Knopf. Dennis is not feeling well today and is going through post-COVID. So I'm going to read his poems for him. A Night in Brooklyn. We undid a button, turned out the light, and in that narrow bed, we built the great city, water towers, cisterns, hot asphalt roofs, parks, septic tanks, arterial roads. Kanazi, the intricate channels, the seacoast, underwater mountains, bluffs, islands, the next continent, using only the palms of our hands and the tips of our tongues. Next, we made darkness itself. By then it was time for daybreak, and we closed our eyes until the sun rose, and we had to take it all to pieces, for there could be only one Brooklyn. Waking in Greenpoint in late August. We wanted so much that there be a world as we lay naked on our gray striped mattress, staring up at a trowel mark on the eggshell blue ceiling and waiting for twilight, darkness, dawn, marriage, the child, the horse names of the city. Let there be a universe in which these lovers can wash at their purling spigot and lick each other dry. Early morning, late summer, unmade bed. Remember the suffering of this pronoun I, how this vowel was slighted and betrayed, how this letter undressed and lay awake until dawn, when even the logy oaks were overburdened with the self. Even the mirror, window, wine glass were inhabited by a glint, a radiant edge. Then she knelt at the head of the bed, where to unzip her boot. Fork and spoon were reconciled. This letter was lost in a heaven that hurt, like the labyrinthine labor of the racing mind. Take your sharp pencil, love, and erase me from the top down, leaving a smudge to darken between the naked sleepers. Red Antares in a blue mirror. On that close nap futon, she taught me the difference between being and becoming. When she had finished, it was still twilight, a cricket singing I, not furiously, but with a cool insistence. And I understood how the universe was created, how it fit in a pinhead 14 billion years ago, when the first second lasted almost forever. Then it flew into a trillion pieces, and now it obeys laws we recognize the way a pet comes to look like its owner. She was washing at the cold tap. She was binding back her copper hair, but I had been given those absolute weapons, suffer, abnegation, miracle, and I had to use them, if only by counting until it was night and the rain simmered in the dog's huge eyes. Picnic by the inland sea. We understood we were hurtling into space at 18 miles per second, clouds of atoms charged and polarized, each alone in the abyss, and you wore your summer dress. The light under the poplar was mottled, but the shade of the pines was feathered. We were bundles of self-counseling voices, flight and response, punishment and reward, hostile adoration, panic and certainty, from long before the Bronze Age. Yet we made our own promises by suppressed coughs or sneezes and sat a little apart, but sometimes our eyes brushed. We sipped Montepulciano from a paper cup until the bottom darkened, but still it was not evening. Still the world was ending. Always we resented the breeze for choosing and marking us. Still a song too short to sing moved two famished sparrows like pawns from branch to branch. And the last poem, This Life. After swimming in Kiln Lake, we were so tired, you and I. We dried ourselves with the nubby towel that smells of dog, then slept side by side in the tall grass, careless of ticks. When we woke, it was this life. We dried each other again with our fingertips. Venus had risen, and a red star flashing at the horizon, Antares or Betelgeuse. As always, we waited for a sign. Let this life be a sign. We heard the frogs calling, almost ranting, and saw no one. The rushes bent to our shape, a glowworm, two clumps of breathing earth. Dennis, some amazing poems. So glad you were here to have a listen at least, and I'm so sorry you weren't feeling well today, but wow. I think we will have to go and get you a new book for sure. And now we hear from an old friend of mine, Karina van Berkhum, who's an editor and poet. She grew up in rural New Hampshire and finds herself returning to the woods. She enjoys writing about family, childhood, queerness, animals, and the wonderful places she's traveled and worked, including Greenland, South Africa, Slovakia, Peru, and Austria. She was a 2016 Robert Pinsky Poetry Teaching Fellow at BU, where she received the Hurley Prize in Poetry. And she's taught creative writing at Grub Street and Boston University. Karina's work has appeared in many publications, including Plowshares, 5 Points, Woven Tales Press, Beltway, the American Journal of Poetry, and Strange Horizons, for which she received a Riesling Award nomination for outstanding poetry. Karina now lives in Vermont, where she is the editorial project coordinator for MIT Sloan Management Review and co-editor of Spoke, a poetry annual. Karina's first full-length collection, Warren, was released by Mad Hat Press in 2021. Welcome, Karina.
Thank you, Mark. And beautiful readings before me. Thank you, everybody. So as it's the for love this weekend, I think all my poems that I'm reading, either mine or not mine, are to do with love, but they're all different kinds of love, which I think is appropriate and okay for Valentine's Day. So I'm reading 2 short poems of my own first that will be published this spring. And the first one is called The Last Two Brothers. I watch them smear themselves around the world and worry. I want them with me, to fold them inside a garish treasure chest that I will lower into the sea. There's me, middling on the perfect Pacific, on the perfect surface of the mad Pacific, while my best loves sleep beneath. Conserved, cold-bodied, being me. Their bodies belong to the deep now, and I am the lifeguard. I am the guard. Okay, so this next poem is called Solstice Baby. Saturday, as an old friend sits like a Sphinx queen on the Daedalus roof deck, she too is not pregnant before me. Sunday, I finish the porch back in VT under what is apparently called a strawberry moon. White-blue paint spits into the black plants below, while I howl, these are my things and this is my house. Monday morning, 6 fertility clinic calls, feeling more than ever like a kid. After bad news on Tuesday, I will begin a week-long night of silent debauchery. So this next one is a little bit older. This is from my book, and it's called The Fantasy of Hans Christian Andersen. Ariel, drunk on the bar stool next to me. She grieves, says she feels suckered, did not sprout the legs she was promised. Her siren red thatch clings head to shoulders as she sobs, I am neither a woman nor a fish. The gin, murky, her third, gestures in her lily-knuckled grip. I think, what a dreamer. Who could help but adore? I once read that the Danish novelist who imagined her was celibate. When he died, his recovered journal said, my blood wants love. I pity big-eyed Ariel now, draped over the marble belly of the bar. She is the candied contortion of his original. She looks up, and her teardrops are too severe. They cut tracks. I know it is blood. Stunned, I follow their ooze to the pool on the blue rubber floor around a pile of her salty insides. How had I not noticed her missing lower half? All this time, a torso propped on the stool, snug in its seashell brassiere. With each weeping heave she has pumped from the place where her waist was severed, a sludge of lungs, stomach, and parts of her. The gin, too, must be mixed in. I recall Hans Christian Andersen's full entry. My blood wants love, as my heart does. Like little Karen in his later fairy tale, whose possessed red shoes force her to dance forever, Ariel was misled. She misread, signed for a human soul, not legs. That probably seems like a strange poem to read about love, but kind of is in a way. And then the last poem I'm going to read, Mark said it was fine if I read another poem by someone else that I loved, and this is going to be one of my favorite poems about love is by James Baldwin. Most people obviously know him as a novelist and essayist, but I love his poetry. I think it's a little bit lesser known, and this poem I've taught many times, and it's consummate. It's come back into my life over and over, and it's called Munich, Winter 1973, 4YS. So this is that by James Baldwin. In a strange house, a strange bed, in a strange town, a very strange me is waiting for you. Now it is very early in the morning. The silence is loud. The baby is walking about with his foaming bottle, making strange sounds and deciding, after all, to be my friend. You arrived tonight. How dull time is. How empty, and yet, since I am sitting here, lying here, walking up and down here, waiting, I see that time's cruel ability to make one really wait time's reality. I see your hair, which I call red. I lie here in this bed. Someone teased me once, a friend of ours, saying that I saw your hair red because I was not thinking of the hair on your head. Someone also told me a long time ago, my father told me, it is a terrible thing, son, to fall into the hands of the living God. Now I know what he was saying. not have seen red before, finding myself in this strange, this waiting bed, nor had my naked eye suggested that color was created by the light falling now on me in this strange bed, waiting where no one has ever rested. The streets I observe are wintry. It feels like snow. Starlings circle in the sky, conspiring together and alone, unspeakable journeys into and out of the light. I know I will see you tonight, and snow may fall enough to freeze our tongues and scald our eyes. We may never be found again. Just as birds above our heads circling are singing, knowing that in what lies before them, the always unknown passage, wind, water, air, the failing light, the failing night, the blinding, they must get the journey done. Listen, they have wings and voices, are making choices, are using what they have. They are aware that on long journeys, each bears the other, whirring, stirring, love occurring in the middle of the terrifying air. Thank you. And that was the inimitable James.
Thank you, Karina. That was fantastic. Next, we hear from Oz Hardwick, a European poet, photographer, occasional musician, and accidental academic whose work has been widely published in international journals and anthologies. He's published about a dozen full collections and chapbooks, including Learning to Have Lost, which won the 2019 Rubery International Book Award for Poetry, and most recently, a census for preconceptions from Survision Books in Ireland in 2022. In 2022, he was also awarded the ARC Prize for a lifetime devotion and service to the cause of poetry through wishes to stress that he is not yet dead. With Anne Caldwell, he's edited the Valley Press Anthology of Prose Poetry and Prose Poetry in Theory and Practice. Oz is Professor of Creative Writing at Leeds Trinity University in the UK. Welcome, Oz.
Thank you, and I'm glad I just made it back for that. I've fallen out twice. I've made the mistake of whenever I try typing something into the chat, everything freezes and I fall out, so I won't do that again. But it's been wonderful so far, and I've tried to type it in, but it's failed. I'm going to uncharacteristically begin by reading something that's got line breaks in from quite some time ago, and with people. There was a big music award thing last night, mostly recognized, memorable for inflatable costumes by the look of it, but there were songs apparently as well. This is called After Party. It was a big house, a lot of land, and I couldn't remember who'd invited me. There were tire tracks on the lawn and on the carpet, but the party was winding down. Tangled bodies on couches, on the landing, in the flower beds, leaving just a few of us, jittery with crystals and capsules. Then someone said, read us one of your poems. So I pulled out a couple of books and flipped through dog-eared pages, but I didn't recognize any of the words. And my eyes blurred over unfamiliar phrases, and there was an awkward, jerky silence. Until someone said, look, are you a poet or what? But by then my mouth was dry as I licked my sour, powdered finger, leafing frantically through hazy titles I couldn't focus on, with everyone getting restless. And all I could think of as the room spun sideways was your smile as you'd left. Hours earlier, your arm resting lightly round someone else's waist. So that's my sort of introduction to love poetry at a silly hour of the night here in cold February in the UK. I'm going to read a couple from Census of Preconceptions, which is the new book. I was looking through for things that sort of directly went sort of head on into love poetry territory, but I found them remarkably thin on the ground, although it weaves through an enormous amount of what I write in various forms, as I think it does with, you know, most people. And I'll say something about that shortly. This is called The Ghost in the Touch. Haunting is sap in deciduous trees, is the blade that splits the pavement. And when I open books, the words slip into my lap like hourglass sand, and blank pages stain my fingers. I leave my prints on cash machines, on fairground rides where hair and voices stream in circles like magnetic fields. Ghoul or whirl, it's an impossible distinction in the clatter of machinery and 50s pop songs, in the battering of palms on boarded up libraries. Because haunting is a coloured bulb slowly blinking, a bird in fresh rain slowly drinking, a reader in a darkened room sadly thinking of all the unopened invitations that pile around him. Trees acknowledge invisible forms, act on inscrutable urges, and I run my thumb along a blade of grass or a blade of steel. And haunting is a sealed envelope, the uncertain outline of a story, the narrowing space between two bodies that, like magnets, push harder away the closer they approach. There's a lot of things in this book about the distance that comes with closeness. So this is sort of another one, and sort of about avoiding saying things, which I find most of the things I say in my poems are about avoiding saying things. It's called Highway Blues. Difficult questions push between simple gestures, so I'm careful about the way I hold the car door open, the way I hand you your keys. You never check the mirror before reversing, focusing instead on your tired eyes and immaculately dishevelled hair, while I distract myself by counting backwards from the number of miles we've travelled, rolling the radio dial as if it was a pen or an earlobe. Because awkward bodies push between simple devices, so I'm careful about the way I conceptualize space, the way I negotiate proximity. You never check your speech before accelerating, focusing instead on the tension in your tired legs and immaculately disheveled sheets, while I distract myself by counting the number of conversations we've avoided, pecking consonants as if they were blueberries or lips. Because naked truths push between innocent conversations, so I'm careful about the way I roll down the window, the way I describe rain. I didn't really know what I was going to read, and I'm still not entirely certain as we go along, but I've got thought I might read something from Learning to Have Lost, and so I just opened it on a document on my computer. So here it is, because as I was reading that, if you're an avid reader of my new book, you'd think he made a mistake there, and that's because I was thinking of something else that attached, which is always the case, that apparently not paying attention, but actually just paying attention to the wrong things. And I'd like to read a poem called Origami, which came out of Learning to Have Lost, which came out about 5 years ago, a little chapbook, which is sort of a lot of things about my mother mainly, but also other important people in my life. This is sort of about my wife and sort of about all sorts of things. Origami. As you fold the sheets, it reminds me of the great origami craze of 68, 69. Wherever you went, there were people folding squares into something or other, frogs that hopped when you tapped them with a pencil, and lotuses that opened to reveal Shiva delicately balanced and winking. Some days the air was so thick with planes you had to fold bell-like umbrellas to keep their sharp noses at bay. On rainy days, gutters would become armadas of frigates and galleons, each bristling with guns that pinged matchsticks at passing traffic. Origami was prime time entertainment. There were special live broadcasts at breakfast time from the World Championships in Mexico City, and soaps would end on a seemingly impossible crease, leaving the nation anxiously awaiting the outcome the following evening. A surgeon won the Nobel Prize for the first successful origami heart, and when those gloved astronaut hands planted the first origami stars and stripes on the moon, the whole world held its breath and watched. You, being those few years younger, don't remember it, but the way you fold the pillowcases, sharp edge to sharp edge, could have stopped paper clocks. I'm going to read two more. I think I've got time for two more. One is by someone else, and it's a Brian Patton poem, who I don't know if he's sort of phenomenally known elsewhere, but he's the writer who I think he was the first. I grew up with poetry in the house, and he was the first person that I sort of came across that was like my poetry, and it really spoke to me. So I'd like to read one of his. It's called A Small Dragon, and I love it so much that here's my copy of his love poem signed on that poem by Brian Patton. I found a small dragon in the woodshed. Think it must have come from deep inside a forest because its damp and green leaves are still reflecting in its eyes. I fed it on many things, tried grass, the roots of stars, hazelnut and dandelion, but it stared up at me as if to say, I need food you can't provide. It made a nest amongst the coal, not unlike a bird's, but larger. It is out of place here and is quite silent. If you believed in it, I would come hurrying to your house to let you share my wonder, but I want instead to see if you yourself will pass this way. So that's Brian Patton's lovely poem about little dragons, and I should just read one last thing before handing on, which is the last poem in the new one, and it's called Debrief, and sort of about memory, I guess. Afterwards, he was asked what he was thinking. There were reports, he said, of capacities and measures, of influences and communities, of governments and unnecessary long-haul flights. But what I thought was normal laughter, singing out of tune, and praise for all the cleaners, because cleanliness trumps godliness every single time. And afterwards he was asked what he was feeling. I felt, he said, the uneasy sway of railway carriages switching points, the precipitous temperature drop as the sun passed behind the moon, and the gut-deep rumble of thunder overhead, of food disappearing from shelves. Afterwards, he was asked what he dreamed. I dreamed, he said, of trees with blunt fingers and stars with sharp edges, of a familiar city that grows every time I close my eyes, and I dreamed that everyone who had ever cared for me was alive and skipping down concrete steps leading to the sea. Everyone was smiling, he said. Everyone was smiling. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Oz. Wonderful reading. And next we hear from Virginia Bell, who is the author of From the Belly, from Sibling Rivalry Press, a book-length collection of poetry. And Virginia has published poems and essays and reviews in many journals and anthologies. Her lyric essay, Chicken, is the winner of the 2020 Nonfiction Prize from Nell Literary Magazine. Virginia is co-editor of Rhino Poetry Journal, and she holds a BS in Education and PhD in Comparative Literature, and has taught at the Universities of North Carolina and Maryland, as well as Georgetown, Loyola, DePaul, and the Chicago High School for the Arts. Originally from Pennsylvania, Virginia has lived and traveled all over the world, including places such as India, Pakistan, Spain, and Mexico. Virginia now lives in the Chicago area with her family. Welcome, Virginia.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I'm incredibly honored to be here. This is such a thrill, and this has been a fantastic reading. So thanks, Mark and Cassandra, for inviting me. I really think about the word love in all kinds of complicated ways. So here's all kinds of different poems. This first one I wrote quite a long time ago, and it's also about myself as even younger than that. But I always have a lot of fun reading it. So I'm going to start with it. Learning to read porno. We called it the Sex Pot House, where Jenny and Martha lived with their parents and baby sister. On sleepovers, Jenny would put a glass to her parents' door, and we would all take turns listening, as if we had bit parts in Love American Style. I heard muffled shuffling, like her parents were taking off their shoes or dragging each other around on the shag carpeting. Was that sex? Or Martha would hang Jenny by her ankles out a window, one floor above their parents' bedroom, to peek through its glass doors. But when we pulled Jenny up for reports, she just looked red and out of breath. One afternoon, we were left in charge of the baby, and Martha produced some issues of Hustler. I read a cartoon in which some men persuaded a woman to let them shave her pussy. Geez, I thought. Not that they shaved her, glossy, smooth, pink as PDQ strawberry flavored milk, but that there was hair in the first place. And I knew then that evolution must happen in reverse, that I would devolve from a human into an animal, furred, thick, wild, strong, or at least like the stuffed armadillo in their out-of-bounds living room with its underbelly of coarse, sparse hair. The armadillo held still during the day, but at night, it waddled around the house from room to room, looking and whispering. So I don't know if that memory is trustworthy, but that's how I remember it. And then jumping a bit ahead in time, here's a poem that's more or less for my partner of many years, Ben. It's after a poem by Dante DiStefano called Reading Dostoevsky at 17. And mine is called Reading Tolstoy at 21. In those days, my dreams always changed the ending, and I hated to wake up to a cold Wisconsin morning, like Anna kissing Karenin with the smell of Count Vronsky still in her hair. I craved borscht, pickled onions, black ermine muffs. That was the week of my wisdom teeth extraction, the week on Percocet, alone on a futon on a floor. I grew bored with Anna and fell in love with Levin's story instead. That was a scythe singing through the wheat, a chipped blue bowl of kasha and warm goat milk. That was the promise of babies we would have one day. The train unblowing its whistle like a long, careful inhale. That was the part where I got up and, finding your hand, stood, not knowing we would ever arrive here, precisely here. Our son storming out of the house into the snow with no shoes on. We don't know how his story turns out. So thank you. I do tend to write a lot of poems about being a parent, choosing to be a parent, ambivalence about parent love and parental love. And so here's one about that, questionable whether it's a love poem, but this is about a particular event this past summer in the United States that happened on June 24th, 2022. Tomorrow, I will attend a workshop titled Singing in the Dark Times. Never mind that I tell my class to question the good versus evil binary of light and dark imagery. Insert query here about the Persian origin of the term Manichaean dualism. Never mind that I am now finally post-menopausal, that my children tower like stony obelisks, crowding my path, deaf to my speech, sharpening their points, or that like eclipses, they spit fire and ash, burning and cooling in unpredictable orbit. Perfect metaphor eludes me. Never mind that today what we knew would happen, happened. The overturning, the unvoicing. There are days when I wish I had made a different choice. Days when I wish I had made a different choice, a different difference in my children's lives. I write poems like Self-Portrait as Half-Dead Mole Pulling Herself Across the Grass. Or I binge a Danish drama in which the first woman Staatsminister can't manage even her own son. How far have we come? In 8th grade, codename Lizzie from Planned Parenthood posed a clear plastic vagina on the teacher's desk, squirted jelly into a rubber cup, folded it like a taco and slid it up inside. The son runs away to free a truckload of pigs from slaughter. Disoriented, the pigs martyr their bodies back into the road. It shocked us to see the fillable cavity mirrored there, as if choosing whether, when, and where were all that matters. And I'd like to read one more. This is a little longer, and this is a new, pretty rough poem. So thank you for indulging me, and I'm going to try it out and sort of see how it feels, see how it sounds in my mouth. It's titled Anger, Killer Robot Dogs, Then Love. I haven't clicked Google Images yet, but I'm willing to bet killer robot dogs don't look like real dogs. I bet they have 4 appendages that move like arthritic hips on a cold, wet day. Yet how quick those legs lift and transform into pointed weapons when a particular logarithm is triggered. A moving shadow detected by a motion sensor, a scream or a cry initiating voice recognition software. The question of programming is the source of my fear, disguised as anger. I've consumed enough dystopian narratives to not need imagination. I'm willing to bet killer robot dogs are smaller than you'd think. And will they rust or glitch if left outside untended, like a pit bull in an abandoned yard behind a chain link fence? Lunging with anger because loneliness, because hunger, because having learned from humans. Until collapsing in a bald spot of dirt, a depression the body returns to when anger requires too much energy. My sons told me killer police robots are being launched experimentally in San Francisco, which I misremembered as killer robot dogs. My sons also tell me The Big Lebowski is an allegory for the failure of the revolutions of the 60s. How I mourn Ferlinghetti's dog. He trots freely in the street. He smells what he wants to smell, touching and tasting and testing everything, investigating everything. But I tell my sons to be wary of nostalgia. Until I learned that DC National Airport, AKA Ronald Reagan International, is launching face recognition technology, and that it's modeled on white men's faces, so it misrecognizes the faces of women and people of color. I heard about this prompt, where each day you choose an emotion and an object you associate with that emotion, then go. Why do I find it so much easier to write about grief, water, than anger, or even desire, candy, hot licorice, than anxiety, also candy, jujubes or Swedish fish, or fear, definitely robot dogs? Why not write about joy? Jeff Buckley's cover of Leonard Cohen's Hallelujah played at full volume while my body moves through the world, or the moment I tug at the laces of my hiking boots. Why not write about love? Did you know that jujubes is originally the name for a particular kind of date? From the Old French for the medieval Latin, for the late Latin, from the Greek zisiphone for the Persian zasophon. To understand consonant shifts, compare jealous with zealous. Words are time travel, a wormhole, an escape tunnel beneath the prison of corporate co-optation. Well, maybe. At a cafe, my sons decry a poster, make coffee, not war. I love them for calling out this terrifying irony. I love them for insisting something is wrong in the world. I love them for trying so hard not to be phony. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Virginia. Next, we hear from Philip Nikolayev, who is a Moldovan-American bilingual poet, originally from Chechnya, and now lives in Boston. He is a polyglot and translates poetry from several languages. His poems have appeared in literary periodicals, including Poetry, the Paris Review, Harvard Review, and Grand Street. Philip's verse collections include Monkey Time from Wave Books and Letters from Oldenberry from Salt. Philip co-edits Fulcrum, a serialized anthology of poetry and critical writing. His bilingual edition, The Star of Dazzling Ecstasy, 79 poems by Alexander Pushkin, was translated by Philip and has recently been published by Tip Top Street. It's a great book. Welcome, Philip.
Such delightful company, such a sweet event, so many beautiful and varied poems. Thank you, Balm and Mark Vincennes, for including me. Allison, Hedge, Coke, it was somehow transporting to hear your poems, the weft and woof of sound and meaning in them. And to hear your love poem spontaneously sort of requieted by Alexa, that was just special. We truly live in an age of AI, and word on the street says that these gadgets will soon be competing with us at versifying, you know. Thank you everyone for such a thrilling, talented, and many-voiced, slightly overwhelming synergy. So hey, some love poetry. As Mark mentioned, I translate poems from a lot of languages, some of which I know, and some not really. And I thought I would mostly read translations today, and one poem of my own. And they're all about love in various ways. So I'll start with Sappho, and this is Sappho's famous 31st fragment, which I'm sure you've read in various versions. And here's mine. Truly, the man who is allowed to sit close by you has the fortune of a god. He aims to woo you with his worldly wit and hangs upon your every word and nod, drinking your silver voice and luring laughter. As I steal speechless glances, proudly blessed is he with you, my love. My heart's aflutter, a butterfly in my exploding chest. My tongue is broken. Delicate, a fire spreads through my body. Like a burning net, my eardrums roar, my pores fill with desire. My eyes go blind. I break out in cold sweat. As green as grass, I am at the gates of death, but must endure all this, nevertheless. And the next one is from the Spanish Federico Garcia Lorca, and it is the title is Gacela of the Frightening Presence. I wish that the river would flee from the gully. I wish that the wind were gone from the valley. May the nights roam eyeless at their darkest hour, and may my own heart shed its golden flower. May the oxen whisper to the herbs of the meadows. May the languid rainworms perish in long shadows. May the skull grin broadly, all its teeth a-gleaming. May a tide of yellows drown the silks in streaming. I see wounded midnight, twisted, coiled, and cruel, striking at high noontide in their ancient duel. I shun the green venom of a falling evening and the shattered archways in which time is grieving. But I beg, don't blind me with revealing flashes like a swarthy cactus stark among the rushes. Leave me lost in longing for some cosmic flare. Only do not lure me with your waste all bare. And the next poem is one of the most famous poems of the Bengali language. And it's from Jibonananda Das. And the title of this poem is Bunalata Shen, which is a feminine name. There is a great deal of discussion in Bengali literature about the meaning and the context and the backgrounds to this poem and so on. Without going into any of this or into any of the glosses, I will just read it to you. It's special for its sound in Bengali, and I listened to it recited in Bengali many times as I was attempting this translation. So here it goes. Bonolata Shen. I have roamed this earth path by winding path a few thousand years, from the Ceylonese in the dead of night to the Malay seas. I've seen many things, from Ashoka the king's hoary realm and time. I with all my might pressed through night and mist to Vidarbha's clime. Worn out and forlorn, I'm a heart that floats alone on the ocean. Who can soothe me then? Only one, Nator's Banalata Shen. Her black hair's as bright as Vidisha at night in the lack of light. Her well-sculpted face shows a classic grace. A sailor may sight or a helmsman see, adrift rudderlessly on the choppy sea, a green distant mile or a cinnamon isle, just so likewise me. In the night I spy her and she says, "Oh, where have you been?" Fixing me in the gaze of her bird nest eyes, my friend Bonolata Shen. The long day is past, night rolls out its dusk like dew on the grass. The eagle is keen to wipe from his wings the sunshine at last. When darkness is made, the earth's colors fade from the pale designs. Soon fireflies emerge in a twinkling surge to inscribe their signs. All the birds are gone, all rivers run home, all tasks are done. So now again, only night remains and darkness reigns as I sit face with Bonolata Shen. A few poems from Russian. Osip Mandelstam to Cassandra. And this is actually dedicated to Anna Akhmatova, with whom he was in love briefly in 1917. Unhappily, it was an unrequited story. She couldn't love him back. And so this poem refers to this as well as to the aftermath of the Bolshevik Revolution. These two things are kind of blended together in the poem. To Cassandra. I did not seek in spring's blossoming moments your lips, Cassandra, nor your eyes. But now December's vigil is upon us, tormenting us with memories. So in December 1917, we lost all we had, all we loved, some dispossessed by the people's will, the rest of us self-robbed. But if our life itself has need for lunacy, tall buildings rising in the forest's wake, fly boldly on, O armless victory, Hyperborean plague. In the square I see a man amid armored cars of war. He is scaring wolves with firebrands, freedom, equality, the law. You moan, you burn, darling Cassandra. A century ago, oh, why did the radiant sun of Alexander, Pushkin, light up our common sky? One day soon, in this rabid capital, on the banks of the Neva, to the dread din of a Scythian carnival, they'll tear the kerchief from your lovely head. And then a very short translation of a poem by Marina Tsvetaeva. The title is Love. A scimitar, a flame, be modest, not loud or wild. Its pain, as familiar as the palm is to the eyes or to the lips, the name of your own child. And another short translation of a poem by Olga Chugai. She was an outstanding Russian poet. Her dates are 1944, 2015, and she was an older friend, sort of a mentor friend to me when I was young. And here's the poem. That which your hands have touched has since perished. Slowly the fire of life turns all that lives to black dust. However, all that your heart has touched and cherished has survived. Only love lives longer than us. And I conclude with a poem of my own, not a translation. Stranger things have happened. According to the feed item, Mr. Basu, a 41-year-old Bangalore man, has married the rat he believes to be a reincarnation of his first wife, killed in a car accident. The father of 4 young kids, Mr. Basu, felt devastated, destroyed, until one day, some months later, a female rat came to his doorstep. It had my wife's eyes and nose, he said. He understood quickly and without doubt who it was. I offered it my wife's favorite cookies, and it devoured them just like she would have done. There was immediate mutual affection and the familiar expression of the eyes. Mr. Basu consulted temple officials who supported him in his decision and performed the ceremony. The two were reunited, their reciprocal consent beyond question. Laugh, all you who like to laugh, and rage, all you who like to rage, and drone on, you with the correct religion, from positions of your presumably sounder knowledge and saner minds, you who cannot imagine marrying a rat. I wonder how they're doing now, but the newsfeed is silent. The human mess has moved on and forgotten them. I imagine them living happily and peacefully ever after in a secluded cottage somewhere. I only hope, dear, come what may, always to cling to you with the same mad loyalty and to show the same blind faith in the face of death. I only hope. That's it. Thank you. And happy Valentine's Day.
Thank you so much, Philip. And once again, I'd like to thank all of you who have appeared here today. Allison, Anne, Dennis, unfortunately not so well, but anyway, I read Dennis's poems, and Karina, and Oz Hardwick, and Virginia, and Philip. Thank you so much all for joining us. And I'm now going to hand over the show to my co-host, Cassandra Atherton, who's going to show us some exciting new things from the open mic.
Yep, it's going to be stellar. We've started with amazing features and we're going to continue right through to the open mic. We're asking people to read just one poem because we've got a few people on the list, and we're going to kick off. You know him well. You know his chair. He's a scintillating poet. He's a brilliant wordsmith. He's a literary riffer. DeWitt, will you open the open for us?
Who's that? Oh, this is a revised poem actually called Fake Nudes. Breaking news. All the nudes fit to print. Want the bad nudes first or the good? Mannequins wait for the window dresser. For artist model, see Jacques Rivette's La Belle Nauseuse, where Emmanuel Biert is forced to hold poses that defy flesh. It's not about the flesh, not about nudity, the artist's wife explained. Strippers at work. Nudism itself, insisting that skin is natural, nothing to hide. Shame on squares who stare. Except for the clinical gaze, for health's sake, or airport body scans seeking weapons. And the real? Best recognized with eyes wide shut. One flesh, bared hearts.
Loved it. And you know, actually, it is all about the flesh. It's always about the flesh. But now, every time you read an open mic, I'm going to insist on hand gestures to begin, because that was like such a great breaking news. So yeah, you can think up some hand gestures. Next, we have R.L. Jeffries. I'm excited because they were supposed to read yesterday, but we ran out of time. So we're putting them right up the top of open mic today. So please unmute and give us your poem. No? Are we having a problem? We can move on then. And we've got wonderful and prolific poet Dominique Heck, who's going to read for us. She is amazing. You're going to love her poetry. So Dominique, can you unmute yourself and give us your poem, please?
Thank you, Cassandra. I'm going to read from the central part of a triptych called Autopos, and the central part is called Fervor. Let me put on my glasses. At the sacred Kingfisher Festival, we dance to the beating of drums, our laughter rapturous and rebellious among the pinging of bellbirds. The air smelled of river mint, wild myrtle, and boronia as a red haze rose between us and the horizon line. In the bog garden, we chased the wandering sun, and you picked golden billy buttons, and we kissed under the tessellated tower of my hair. Caped in your fake lion skin, you said I reminded you of Castilia. Who is she, I asked, in an intermixing of levity and seriousness. We ate steamed mussels and fried calamari, olives and hot peppers, octopus affaira and gazpacho. We drank tequila, liked its hot spring in our bellies. We sucked on lemons and ice. Already my heart felt unparched, its chambers soft inside its suckering pericardium. You blew through the bushes and wetland bulrushes without a word, like a bird on the wind itself? Was it love's fervency and desire we had interlaced together? I seek you everywhere, through the grasslands and woodlands and shrublands, through spiny-headed mat rushes, tufted bluebells, sickle ferns and pussy tails. I tear through spear grass and around patches of golden wattle, silver banksia and swamp paperbark. At the curve in the creek where the river red gum stands, I cut a heart out of its bark for a shield. The gum bleeds, but I lash through wedge leaf hop bushes and rosemary grevilleas, slashing punctuation, save the arithmetical love period. For now, I seek you in shoals of fish, I seek you in clouds of bats, I seek you in schoolings of tadpoles, I seek you in murders of crows, I seek you in the sturdiness of your name, I seek you in the word lover. I found you in music and painting and poetry. I found you in myth and make you mine, needing words as one would go beyond the trammels of the self, where reminiscences and expectations deflate being, and slowly I rise from its shell, shaping what becomes like a promise. I surrender to the sky like a flowering gum, deploying its satin. I reach for your hand and touch only a dream blossoming spikes. Slowly, I rise from emptiness, shaping what becomes a prayer. You wave to me from outside the gleaming window when out of the blue a little kingfisher flies into the glass. Look how stunned the bird is, how it shakes itself off from shadow sheen and flies away. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We kissed under the tessellated tower of my hair. What amazing lines in that poem. Thank you so much. It was amazing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, we have Tony. I'm not sure if Tony's read for us before, but I'm excited to see what they might have for us today. So, Tony, you are next.
Hi,
Can you
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Oh, thank you for this. And I really just stumbled onto this tonight, and so it's been fantastic. Thank you. This is a poem which is called "I'm a Trans Person." This poem is from a sequence of sonnets which have that theme, and it's called "A Reunion." It takes an epigraph from the Bible: "Whosoever would save his soul shall lose it." That's Mark. It was with shock I found that student passport pic. I took several strips to find a face I could accept. All youth spirit given a safe porcelain glaze. Dull, dull, numb to lack in the numb mask he portrayed. Compare my letter decade snaps, the very picture of a person, happy, warm, connected, dolling it up heart-free beyond my taut horizon. As a young woman, I only start to see me now, reconcile how a youth's treasure was spent to hide, dial myself into combinations, self-safe shut, to step out unfussed, mirror of what was wanted, model of a grammar of needs, need inverted. How this heart's been tempered, in absence grew. My dress has uncovered me. Is this me with you?
Wow, you are welcome back anytime. My dress has uncovered me. Yeah, please. We would love to hear more of you in open mic. Thanks so much for dropping by.
Thank you.
And Al Jeffries is back. So we're going to go to RL.
Thank you, Cassandra. Forgive me. I too am dealing with long-term COVID. And forgive me for not being on cam. I also have a chip too, so it's been an adventure. Mark, I want to thank you for inspiring me yesterday, talking about thematically love being the theme. And I was working on a piece and said, I'm going to finish that. So I did. It's still in the works, but it's something new. So forgive me. It's a bit rough around the edges, but It is called Death, the Great Mystery of Life. Death, the Great Mystery of Life, the end of one journey, a final cut of the knife. Yet it is something to not fear debate, for death is only the coda of life's lyrical fate, like the falling of leaves from an autumn tree, or the setting of the sun when the day is set free. So too must we embrace the change and unknown, for death is not an end, but another passage shown. So let us all live our lives to the fullest with love, joy, compassion, and never the dullest. And when our time comes for us to depart, we will leave a residence which warms another's heart. For death may take our body, but never our soul. Our spirits will live on, forever alive, forever whole. And just as the seasons must come and go, so too will we in the cycle of life and its flow. Let us not fear death, but in life only celebrate and embrace the recess without fear of our fate. For death is a part of the journey we all take, and a legacy will always remain for love's sake. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you. Yes, let us live our lives to the fullest. And sorry to hear that you're suffering a bit and you have a chipped tooth, but it was made up for us from that wonderful poem that you gave us. So thank you. Next, we have Lindsay, who I believe has a book out with Pierian Springs of Kurt Lovelace from yesterday, read us some poems, and Lindsay's going to read us a poem today. So Lindsay, if you can unmute, you are up next. I'm just going to prompt her to unmute.
Oh, I did. Just
excellent. Hooray.
I guess it's trying to keep me to shut up. Okay. Anyway, yes, this is my 5th poetry book, and it's from Pierian Springs, and I will read something from it. I was going to read one called Swimming in Perthy Grady that I was so thrilled and honored. It made it into this anthology with people with much bigger names than mine. It's called The Contemporary Surrealist and Magical Realist Poetry, edited by Jonas Vandes, who has about 20 books out. So I have 3 novels, only 2 are on there, and 5 poetry books, and my 6th one is going to be the continuation. This is Crossing Kansas with Jim Morrison, and next one's Cashing Checks with Jim Morrison. So far, it's my bestseller. It's the Jim Morrison. But anyway, here is a romantic one, kind of, from the Book of Frenzies. I'm going to read this one instead. It's called Anna Iguananina. Iguanas appear throughout my frenzies because I like the way it sounds, and I like that image. I have Audrey Iguananina, which is after Audrey Hepburn, but this is Anna. Blame the trains, coupling and uncoupling, clangs, bang through Anna's brains till she grew insane and ran for Alexei, also Carragon, to Count Alexei, also Vronsky, and back again because she didn't want to leave Sergei, also Alichit, Sergei and Kuchit behind. Her head pounded through pages and pages, and all these rushes pondered and wandered back and forth from St. Petersburg to Moscow, so Alexei, also Karina, could beat his fist on the powwow table. But no one was ready to revote yet, so they took another vote. And only Levin, also Dmitri, also Kostya, thought to till soil and plant wheat after he left his sweaty feet at the office. Then the trains railed back into the scene, leaving Anna in a lean and mean position, and at the end no yeast was left, so all of them relied on Levin, also Dmitrich and Kostya, to make the crops rise. And that's, yes, Levin was probably the hero of the book after all. And then I'll read you this short one that is from Crossing Kansas with Jim Morrison, because it's got some romance going in it. It's all made up. I never met Jim Morrison, but my persona was driving across Kansas, and he crawled out through her stereo and became alive. So she tries to get his bones resurrected through La Loba, who is a Southwest and Hispanic and Southwest Indian legend of the wolf woman, La Loba. Anyway, but this one is simply, Jim Morrison takes me on a midnight trip. There he stands, leaning against the door jamb, in his tight black leather motorcycle gear. Like James Dean, he purses his lips, then shifts weight from one hip to the other. Tonight he sings of the LA woman, bright lights and rolling down the highway late at night. I pull away. Then he touches my shoulder, and I'm hooked for another midnight ride across the city, cruising asphalt at speeds too fast for me to last. At any rate, thank you very much. I'm so honored. All of you people are so prolific. I'm just amazed. I wasn't expecting this. Thank you.
Thank you for reading, and I'm loving the intertextual Anna Kareninas we're getting today. Absolutely. So thank you. We've got Claudia, who is up next. I'm excited to hear what Claudia has for us.
Thank you, Cassandra. Yeah, thank you. And I've really enjoyed this. This is a beautiful reading. All the different approaches to love and the translations. I'm just going to read a little very short triptych of love poems, and the total is about 40 lines. The first section is called At Last, a Man Who Listens. He whispers, write a poem, and suggests no subject. She thinks she'll wrap her arms and poem about him. Next, as remembered, 20, 30 years, 2 continents, 3 cities, the telephone rings. Filling silences, we describe families. I say my hair's turning gray. Laughter's old music, our conversation's scaffold has never collapsed. In memory's loft, breath, words, spaces between words, there you perch, singing. And finally, too much here. There may be too much here, you say, and yes, it's true. We've tried hard to ignore its presence, though we knew our lives were in its power. Too much what? As a clue, let's write it. Too much here. Words on a line, peer through both of us. What we are, what little we can do with the too much that's here. You've said it, and it's true, but it won't disappear, nor do we want it to. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love the way it opens with he whispers, write a poem. How incredibly seductive. So thank you for your truth.
Thank you so much.
Next we have, she's pretty amazing. It's Karen. She always reads us something beautiful, something memorable. She was pretty fabulous yesterday. What do you got for us today, Karen?
At the moment that you asked her what she was going to do, she just like disappeared.
No, she's still around. I saw her. I prompted her to.
I was looking at her and I was like, she's
She might be muted.
Yeah. I've asked her to unmute a few times.
I guess I got so excited. Yeah, I must have gotten so excited. I pushed the camera instead of the microphone, but thank you. Here I am. This has been a second day of absolutely wonderful readings. So thank you, everyone. I'm going to read a love poem. It's to my husband. I don't write a lot of love poems. Everyone was saying that yesterday. So here we go. It's called Winter Body in the Bubble of Now. After the calmness claimed or bound loosely, this entire body, no entrance became again enticed by tidal motion. Remembering prior seemed to lead to a past replayed without intensity. But when he took my, offered his hand along the icy path as we walked side by side, what stirred within me was something to sing, was something that would keep expanding and never burst.
Wow, your bubble of now is phenomenal. Thank you so much for reading. Fantastic. I've loved your stuff the last 2 days. And we could only move now to badass Brooklyn Cindy, who writes killer poetry that's going to rev you up. I think she's been saving an alliterative poem for us, but I'm not sure because, you know, she can change her mind and just knock us out with any number of poems that she's written. So, Cindy.
I never change my mind. I am going to read an alliterative poem that I managed to eke out this week. It's L for guess what? And Cassandra will like the title, I think. L is for love, lust, and loads of laundry. Lo and behold, and by the way, everyone, I'm working on a series of 26 poems for the alphabet. Every poem just goes wild with alliteration on that letter. So this is L. Lo and behold, the following lines have little to do with loads of laundry. But do you love lists and litanies? Do you love loquacious alphabetical alliteratives? And doesn't the whole world love love? Lo contraire, not the luckless, not the lovelorn, not those who have been left alone in their lofts by lawless lowlifes on Lexington. That's a fancy avenue in New York. Lords and ladies, if you are looking to locate the love of your life, whether you live in Louisiana, Las Vegas, Los Angeles, or London, and let's lob in Australia, since it lodges an L as well, then listen to my lovely little libretto. No lousy lovers, no listless or lackadaisical liars or losers or lumbering lame brains who get lost limping to the loo. I love them lanky and long-limbed and never late. I lean toward left-wing liberals, and when my latest beloved is lying leisurely in my lapis lazuli lair, I like to lick a lollipop lustily like Linda Lovelace. Ooh la la. Now let's learn what you love. Do you love Elizabeth Bishop's lament about loss, or Louise Gluck, or Thomas Lux in Luxembourg, or more likely at Sarah Lawrence, where he lectured before he left the living? And please don't leave out those loony surrealists, Louis Aragon and Paul Eluard. I'm probably pronouncing them wrong. Do you love Lucy? I love Lucy. Do you love Lloyd's of London, which lent my live legs 1,000,000 liras? Well, not really. And 1,000,000 liras looks like a lot, but it's only $53,108 in legal tender. I had to look that up, LOL. Actually, I loathe Lloyd's of London. They believe my legs are lurid and lumpy, but I love them nonetheless. Oh Lord, my limbs are starting to lurch and lag, and the lifespan of this ludicrous lyric is limited. So last but not least, I love Lit Balm with its lively and literate readers and lovable leaders. Later, alligator. La 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 la. The end.
That was a tour de force. Oh my God, that was amazing. There's too many good lines there. No lazy lovers could be my favorite. But I also think maybe you need to bring your lollipop next time after you've
I knew you touched that line.
Of course.
I read
I loved that poem, Cindy. I can't believe that you enshrined us all in a poem. That's pretty fabulous. But now it's Bob from his kitchen. He's going to give us something special, something pertinent, something thought-provoking, sometimes something quirky, but whatever he kind of reads us, it sticks around in my head for the rest of the day. And that's what I love about his final moment in the open mic. Bob.
Thank you. Okay, this isn't a love poem, although love makes an appearance. After love became the heavy weight that was lifted, and the bellman unlocked the ceiling to reveal the tired egg that was really an avalanche, I drifted back again into my little boat to sleep until my stomach rang aloud with the message that love was back and angry at the door, refusing to unzip itself until I was again stuck back into the ground, from which I had only so recently strayed.
That was brilliant, Bob. I love the quirkiness. I love the craziness. You are fabulous. We love you beaming in from your kitchen. Mark, we love you
so much.
from your area with your Dada book.
What an open mic, man. Wow.
Yeah.
Thanks again so much, Allison, Anne, Dennis, Karina, Oz, Virginia, and Philip. Such an amazing show. I think I'm going to conclude this show with a love poem to my dog. And it's called The Best Red Apples.
Mark, I have to know before you start, is this to your dog Millie or your new dog?
This is to my dog Millie.
Okay.
For my dog Emily Malouche Dickinson, better known as Millie. And the epigraph is, my heart is like an apple tree whose boughs are bent with thick-set fruit. And that's a little epigraph from Christina Rossetti. The best red apples lays at the top of the tree, those that sag and sway, the ripest, compelled by the earth or gravity's arduous work. Let's open this pocket of wasteland. There's no happily ever after. Nothing lives into infinity. A bold dictum by my grandmother, she who could coax squirrels from their holes, who could sense the cutting of timber, the windowless features from the Last Supper, the sun and the ghost looking out upon whom? Friends, Romans, country folk, let us follow these funereal rites and honor the warrior with his irons in the fire. Watch how the flag flutters at half-mast and the larches hop through the grass looking for honeybees. An atheist plays his croquet. A nun blows out the light, all these candles and the shining handles in the grapevine of ideas. Connive, they say. You may only be half alive. Watch the trajectory of the half and the whole. Watch the burning dragging behind that cause, that wake, and building. Build a love machine, like part of your central heating system. Listen to those pipes pump and sway. For love and poetry. Thank you all. This has been such an amazing evening. And want you to know you're all in my heart. And I love you.
And thank you for not watching the Super Bowl and coming to Lip Balm instead.
Exactly.
We love that. We love that you're here. So yeah, peace, love, and love machines.
The Love Bowl.
Thanks so much, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.